Happy Sunday, my friends. Let me get comfortable, situated in my seat. Storytime Sunday. This story is anonymously shared from another woman, or it's written by another woman, shared by me. And Storytime Sunday is about the stories we tell ourselves. And the stories that we tell ourselves are the hidden mechanism behind a lot of the things that we don't know is preventing us from getting from A to B. It's behind the reason why we feel a lot of guilt and shame and frustration and anxiety and a whole host of other things. And it is alarming how little we all know about the stories we tell ourselves, even though we're doing it every day. So this series is our stories about the stories we tell ourselves and how we are breaking cycles and reclaiming our power. So the stories are shared by me or with another woman, and also shared by me from other women when they're sharing them in their email. So if you have a story, which all of your stories are very important and necessary and need to be heard by other women so that we can all start to realize that we are not all alone. Right now, I feel like what is happening is a lot of women are feeling alone together. So we want to come together to share these stories and break these cycles and reclaim our power. So this is a story that was shared anonymously, and it is about a couple who have been married for over 10 years. And she said, about halfway through, I had an emotional affair, meaning I was very attracted to a friend coworker and started sexting with this person. In the beginning, it was just a budding friendship, but quickly grew into something more. My husband was aware of some of the chat between this person and I, but not the full extent. It grew to the point where I deleted texts between us as I was afraid he would read them. They were pretty sexual. After a short while, I told my husband that I was attracted to this person. I felt a little more comfortable at least letting him know that much because this person is a female. But again, didn't divulge the whole story. Eventually, I told him everything. The story I told myself was he would leave me based on a previous conversation about cheating. So I was expecting the worst and broke down when I told him. He spent a lot of his energy in asking questions and comforting me. He didn't get mad, much to my relief, and he didn't really have any other outlet. During our time dealing with it, my husband and I continued to be friends with her, which added another level of complexity. We would email each other, all three of us, throughout the day. My husband and I continued to learn about sexuality, which helped us both to understand more. Learning that sexuality is more fluid than most think was an eye-opener. I've known for a while, at least since high school, that I've been attracted to women and now consider myself pansexual. Directly after the affair, I considered myself bisexual. We also learned about crushes and attraction and fantasy. Despite continuing to learn and to be open regarding sexuality, things weren't perfect. There were still unresolved things and stories we told ourselves. My husband was so stressed about the affair, he ended up getting a stress-related disorder. I also told myself that things were better and that my husband would understand my attraction to others better, and I could tell him if I felt attracted to anyone else, which I did shortly after the affair. I was attracted to someone at work, at a work meeting, on a work trip. His reaction to my attraction to this person was a lot different. I thought this was mostly because this person is male. However, his thought process that led him to that reaction was that there were a lot more unknowns, which made him fill in the blanks. And the closeness in time to the end of the affair was also a factor for him. It was a silent reaction where questions weren't asked and not a lot of talking. I then told myself I couldn't tell him if I were attracted to anyone else, especially men. Recently, my husband was being extra quiet, not talking to me like he normally does. When I finally found my voice, I told him I felt hurt and unacknowledged when he didn't talk to me. He told me that he didn't get to resolve things from 5 years ago. He never got to get it out and was considering talking to a therapist. He also questioned himself and felt inadequate. He told me that he had been telling himself stories, that he told himself there may be something going on between a new friend and I. There were many things that added up in his mind that seemed like the perfect affair story. We were able to get out a lot, talking about my attraction to others and how he just doesn't feel attracted to other people. We talked about our histories, my previous sexual partners and experiences, and his lack of experience before me. We talked about his shame and how it affected his reaction towards me, which then affected me. My reluctance to disclose attraction to or even thoughts about someone else due to fear of him distancing from me, which only made the attraction and thoughts grow in a way. Our openness to listen without judgment did wonders. We took the time needed to talk and listen, which we had put off before, and had other discussions that weren't as open. He described it as a reboot where we both see things in a different light. There was less guilt, shame, embarrassment. It was more discussion. I wanted to share so that others know that it may not be just them, and that sometimes it can take years to work on issues, and it can be worth it. So there is a lot in this story, right? And at the beginning, she was having this emotional affair, and her story was, I can't share this with my husband in a productive way because of previous discussions that were had. And this is something that we can all relate to, especially when it comes to the stories that we tell ourselves. Without information, without our own personal experience, it's really easy to say, like, oh, if you ever cheated on me, I would leave. Or if you ever did this, I would leave, right? It's so easy to exclaim that we would do this certain thing or we would be this certain person in a situation that we have never been in, right? So we have to start being a lot more careful about how we are engaging with each other and what we are proclaiming that we would do in a situation that we have never been in. And you can take that across the board with belief systems or anything else that, like, oh, I would never do that. I would never be this person. And the truth is, we are not that far away from each other ever. And to understand that we are all very human and that we don't know what we would do in certain scenarios before we've been in the scenario, and especially, we have no idea how we would react if that scenario involves someone that we deeply loved. So telling that story and being careful of what we proclaim to ourselves and our partners and our friends and the people close to us about how we would be and how we would respond and how we would react in situations that we've never been in. So she was afraid to share this with her husband for a long time because the story that they both had was, he had shared with her sometime in their relationship that in previous conversations, like, I would leave if I was ever cheated on. And there was an emotional affair. He did not leave. They worked through it. So it was a much different experience. We don't know how we would react to a situation that we have never been in. We can think and guess and create a story, right? We can write a story around it. The other story is, what I really loved about what she shared in her story is that it took a long time. It wasn't the expectation that I'm going to have this really uncomfortable, very important, very deep conversation, and then we're going to be done with it, or come to a conclusion at the end of it, or decide the entire fate of us as humans and our relationship right now at the end of this conversation. She did the hard thing and the vulnerable thing and the powerful thing, right? She reclaimed her power by saying, I need to talk about this and we need to share this. And 5 years later, they're still unraveling the layers and still working through it. And I think that is probably one of the most beautiful and one of my most favorite parts of this particular story. For me, I have heard, women, especially at retreats, like people have come to a retreat and then 2 years later, they had a great experience and they loved it and they tell their friends that they loved it. And then 2 years later, it's like I get a call or an email or something that's like, oh my gosh, all of this stuff just unraveled for me. And, I started going to counseling, or I started doing this, and I had this huge breakthrough 2 years later, right? Our expectation is I'm going to have this uncomfortable conversation and I need to fix it right now, as opposed to just going into it with awareness and going into it with the intention of learning more about ourselves and our partners and the people around us in these relationships. So they decided, and this is the coolest part, they decided to learn together more about each other and more as individuals. And historically, right, it takes men a little bit longer to come around to say, like, I think that I should go talk to somebody about this. And he deserves, I hope he eventually watches this, because he deserves so much love and credit for that, to get to the point that he was able to identify, I am feeling some type of way and having a barrier about this, and I would like to talk to somebody about it and start to unpack and unravel these things for myself. This is how we will get the things that we want. This is how our relationships will change, both the relationship with ourselves and our relationships with other people. We will never change and grow and flourish within ourselves and in our relationships if we don't do the uncomfortable things, if we don't have the uncomfortable conversations, if we don't challenge the stories that we have once told other people and the stories that we have told ourselves. I loved this particular story because there were things for me that question, I have been divorced twice. So there were things for me that I questioned, especially in particular in regards to my first marriage, and how many uncomfortable conversations I could have had that changed at least the trajectory of the following year after. So I think it's very important, and this is why even reading her story and then sharing her story, I am sure that it will touch the hearts of many of you as well. For me, when I read it, I could connect in a way that was relieving to know, like, there are so many variations of discomfort that we are all going through in our everyday lives, and to be able to reclaim our power in a way that says, like, this is going to be really hard and this is going to be really scary and it's not going to be easy and it might last a really long time, but it is worth doing. And even when she shared, this is why I'm sharing this story, she said, I wanted to share this story so that others know it is not just them. And sometimes it can take years to work on issues, and it is so worth it. So as you are sitting there, as you are listening to this, as these words are hitting you and capturing your heart, I want you to just take a big breath, just a big inhale, and a nice relieving exhale. There is not one of us that is not struggling with something. There is not one of us that does not have a whole package of stories that we need to unravel and unwind. And we all have power just waiting inside of us to reclaim. We can get better at having these uncomfortable conversations, and we can actually move through things, not even past them, but through them in a way that not only helps us grow within ourselves, but within all of our relationships and all of the people around us. Our life is happening at rapid speeds right in front of us, all around us, all the time. And being on autopilot is not working. I promise it's not working for you. It's never worked for me. It's never worked for anyone that I have met and spoke with that caught it and woke up to it and said, this is not working. I can't just go through the motions anymore. And that's what we're working a lot on in the Redefining Healthy initiative. Is we have a habit of walking through life on autopilot. And like these stories that we tell ourselves, these hidden mechanisms that we're not even aware of in our day-to-day lives that are holding us back, that are keeping us in these boxes that we were never designed to fit in. And there are tools and techniques that we can implement to break free from these, to break these cycles, to break these patterns that are happening in both our minds and our bodies. You can reclaim your power. In the Redefining Healthy initiative, we work through the tools to live a more mindful and meaningful life, and to stop these hidden mechanisms, these things that are causing all of this frustration and all of this stuckness and all of these things that are preventing us from doing the things that we know would be good for us, preventing us from changing habits that we know we want to change. These are the hidden mechanisms, and these are the ways that we can reclaim our power and break these cycles. I hope this story hit your heart today. And if I know you have a story, I would love to hear it. You could email it to me and I could share it anonymously for you, or you could come on and record a video with me and share your story. This is the work that we have to start doing for ourselves and for each other, because we are not in this together and we do not have to be alone together.